I always thought I knew what my future would look like. My name's Bella, and not too long ago, I was just another finance major fresh out of college, navigating the twists and turns of the corporate world. Then, Michael came along. He was everything you'd imagine a successful businessman to be: confident, driven, and, well, pretty charming. Our first meeting was almost like a scene out of a movie. I was at a local coffee shop, buried in my laptop, when he walked in. I remember him ordering a coffee and then, with a smooth confidence, taking the seat opposite me. "Sorry, is this seat taken?" he asked, though he was already sitting down. I looked up, a bit annoyed at first. "It is now, isn't it?" I replied, trying to mask my surprise with a bit of sass. He just chuckled. "I'm Michael. And you are?" "Bella," I said, closing my laptop, figuring this could be a more interesting conversation than my spreadsheets. From there, it was like we were drawn into each other's worlds. He told me about his business ventures, and I shared my ambitions in finance. He was impressed, or at least he seemed to be. "You've got a sharp mind, Bella. Ever thought of diving into the business world yourself?" he asked, his eyes locking with mine. I laughed. "And leave the thrilling world of finance? I don't know." He smiled, and that smile would soon become a familiar part of my life. Fast forward a bit, and our casual meetups turned into dates. Before I knew it, I was deeply in love. Michael was persuasive, always knowing what to say. When he proposed, it felt like the natural next step. I was young, in love, and ready for a new chapter. So, I left my job, ready to start this new life with him. Becoming a housewife wasn't my plan, but with Michael, it felt right. I took pride in making our house a home. He'd come home from work, and I'd be there, ready with dinner and eager to hear about his day. "Smells great, Bella. You really know your way around the kitchen," he'd say with a contented sigh. I'd blush and reply, "Well, I have a great teacher, my mom. She always said the way to a man's heart is through his stomach." He'd laugh, kiss me on the forehead, and we'd sit down to eat. Those days were simple and happy. I felt like I had everything I needed: a loving husband and a cozy home. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I was settling into my new role as a housewife, content in the routine I had built with Michael. But as time went by, I started noticing changes in him, subtle at first, but they grew harder to ignore. It started with small comments about the meals I cooked. I remember one evening, I had spent hours in the kitchen, trying out a new recipe I thought he'd love. As he took his first bite, I watched eagerly for his reaction. "This chicken is a bit dry, don't you think?" he said, barely looking up from his plate. I was taken aback, but I tried to brush it off. "Oh, I'm sorry. I followed the recipe exactly. I'll try something different next time." He shrugged and continued eating in silence. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had disappointed him. The comments became more frequent and more critical. One night, as I was setting the table, he walked in and looked at me with a frown. "Are you going to wear that for dinner? It's not very flattering," he said, eyeing my casual home clothes. I felt a sting at his words. I didn't think it mattered. I'm just at home, after all." He let out a sigh. "It wouldn't hurt to try a little, Bella. Appearance matters." The critiques weren't just about my cooking or clothes anymore. They seeped into every corner of our home. I spent my days trying to make everything perfect, fearing his disapproval. But it seemed like nothing I did was ever good enough. One evening, as he was going through the house, he called out, "Bella, come here." I hurried over, wondering what was wrong. He was standing in the living room, pointing at a spot on the shelf. "Do you see that? How can you miss dusting there? It's not that hard to keep a house clean, Bella," he said, his tone sharp. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and frustration. "I'm sorry, Michael. I'll clean it right away." I grabbed the duster and started cleaning, feeling his eyes on me the whole time. It was moments like these that made me start to question everything. Was I really failing at being a good wife? Why was he suddenly so hard to please? As I lay in bed that night, listening to Michael's steady breathing, I couldn't help but wonder where the loving man I married had gone. Amidst the growing unease at home, a sliver of hope appeared. I stumbled upon a job opening in a finance firm. It was like a light at the end of a long, dark tunnel. I remembered my days before becoming a housewife, the thrill of working in finance. I thought, why not, and applied. To my surprise, I got called for an interview. The interview day felt like a breath of fresh air. I put on my best professional outfit, feeling a part of my old self awaken. The interview went better than I expected. When they told me I was selected, I felt a surge of excitement I hadn't felt in a long time. I couldn't wait to share the news with Michael. I imagined he'd be proud, maybe even happy that I was taking a step towards something I loved. But I was in for a rude awakening. That evening, Michael came home, looking as stern as ever. I greeted him with a smile, the job offer letter in my hand. Michael, I have some great news. I got a job offer. It's in finance, my field. I'm so excited. I said, my voice bubbling with enthusiasm. He looked at me, his expression turning from surprise to annoyance. A job? Why on earth would you need a job? I provide everything here. I was taken aback. But Michael, it's not about money. It's about me doing something I'm passionate about. He scoffed. Passionate? What about your duties here? Who will cook, clean, and take care of the house? I tried to reason with him. I can manage both. It's important to me, Michael. He slammed his briefcase down. No, Bella. I won't have my wife working. You will turn it down. End of discussion. I stood there, stunned, the letter still in my hand. My heart sank as I realized he wasn't the supportive partner I thought he was. Michael, please, try to understand. This means a lot to me, I pleaded. He was unyielding. I've made my decision. You're not taking the job, and that's final. You have your responsibilities here, Bella. The conversation ended there. He walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of the living room, my hopes dashed. I realized then that Michael's control extended beyond the walls of our house. He wanted to dictate my dreams too. Life at home with Michael turned from challenging to unbearable. His criticisms became harsher, and my spirit grew dimmer with each passing day. The joy I once found in managing our home turned into a relentless cycle of trying to meet impossible standards. One evening, Michael came home later than usual. I had prepared his favorite dish, hoping to bring some warmth to the evening. The clock ticked away as the food cooled on the table. When he finally walked through the door, his face was set in a frown. Sorry, I'm late. Work was a nightmare, he grumbled, hanging his coat. I offered a weak smile. It's okay. Dinner's ready. I made your favorite. He sat down, poking at the food with his fork. This is cold. Can't you time the meals better, Bella? I felt a surge of frustration. I can't predict when you'll be home, Michael. I kept it warm as long as I could. He shot me a stern look. That's no excuse. If you managed your time better, this wouldn't happen. I bit my lip, trying to hold back tears. I do my best, Michael. He scoffed. Clearly, your best isn't good enough. That remark cut deep. The dinner I had prepared with care now felt like a symbol of my failure. The criticisms didn't stop there. Michael's scrutiny extended to every corner of our house. One day, he pointed out a spot I had missed while cleaning. Bella, how many times do I have to tell you? This place needs to be spotless. I knelt down, scrubbing the spot vigorously. I'm sorry, I must have missed it. He stood over me, his tone harsh. You're always sorry, but nothing changes. You need to do better. I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. It felt like I was losing a battle I didn't even know I was fighting. His late nights became more frequent, and his excuses more vague. Work was all he'd say when I asked where he had been. I stopped asking after a while, afraid of his cold responses. Lying in bed that night, I listened to the silence of the house. It was in that stillness that I made a decision. I didn't know how or when, but I knew I had to reclaim my life, my independence. The next morning would be the first step towards a new beginning, I promised myself. It was time to break free from this cycle. Amid the chaos at home, I had a secret. A secret that gave me a sense of control and hope. Before I met Michael, my grandmother had left me a substantial amount of money. Out of respect for her memory and her belief in my financial acumen, I had quietly invested that money. Michael knew nothing about it. This secret was my lifeline, a silent rebellion against the constraints of my life with him. One day, while Michael was at work, I checked my investment portfolio. The stocks I had chosen were performing well, much to my relief and pride. I remember whispering to myself, "You're doing all right, Bella. Better than all right." It was a small victory, but in my world, it meant everything. It was proof that I could make smart decisions, that I had a skill that extended beyond the walls of my house. Later that evening, Michael came home, his mood sour as usual. He started nitpicking the moment he walked in. "Bella, why are these curtains still here?" "I thought I told you to get new ones," he complained, barely glancing at me. I responded calmly, "I haven't had the chance to go out yet. I'll take care of it soon." He scoffed. "You always have some excuse. It's not that hard to manage a household, you know." I bit my tongue, holding back the retort that was on the tip of my tongue. Instead, I turned my attention back to the dinner preparations, my mind racing. That night, after Michael went to bed, I sat at my computer, looking over my investments again. Each figure on the screen was a testament to my capabilities, a sharp contrast to the doubts Michael tried to plant in me. I started planning more carefully, considering different investment options, researching, and strategizing. It was exhilarating, feeling the gears in my mind turn, unobstructed and efficient. One day, I mustered the courage to broach a financial topic with Michael. It was a risk, but I needed to know where I stood. "Michael, have you thought about investing? It might be a good way to grow our savings," I suggested cautiously during dinner. He looked at me, surprise evident on his face. "Investing? What do you know about investing?" I tried to keep my tone light. "Well, I've read a bit. It's interesting, and it could be beneficial." He laughed, a cold, dismissive sound. "Let me handle the finances, Bella. That's not something you need to worry your pretty little head about." His words stung, but they also fueled a quiet determination within me. I didn't argue, just nodded and changed the subject. As the days rolled on, my patience and resilience wore thin under the constant strain of Michael's criticisms. The house that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison, with Michael as the unrelenting warden. It was a typical evening, but what transpired would mark the turning point in my life with Michael. I had spent the day cleaning and cooking, trying to ensure everything was perfect to avoid any conflict. Michael arrived home late, as had become his habit. The dinner I prepared was still warm, but I could feel the tension in the air as he walked in. "Evening," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Dinner is ready." He didn't respond, just grunted and sat down at the table. I served him his plate, hoping for a peaceful meal. He poked at the food with his fork, his face growing more discontented. "This is what you call dinner? It's tasteless," he snapped, pushing the plate away. I felt my heart sink. "I followed the recipe exactly, Michael. I thought you'd like it." He glared at me, his voice rising. "You thought wrong, then? Can't you do anything right?" I tried to hold back my frustration. "I'm trying my best, Michael. I really am. He scoffed, your best. This is pathetic. Then his face was twisted with anger. He grabbed a handful of spaghetti and threw it at me. The hot pasta and sauce hit my face and clothes, a painful and humiliating moment. I stood there in shock, my face stinging from the sauce. Michael just sat there, looking at me with contempt. Clean this mess up, he ordered, standing up from the table. I didn't move, still processing what had just happened. This was too much. The hurt, the humiliation, it all came crashing down on me. Michael, how could you? I managed to say, my voice trembling. He didn't even have the decency to look remorseful. Just clean it up, Bella. I'm going to bed. With that, he left me there, standing in a room splattered with spaghetti, my dignity in tatters. I slowly started to clean up, the tears I had been holding back now streaming down my face. That night the events of the evening replayed in my mind. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't love, this was control, disrespect, and humiliation. I couldn't live like this anymore. I refused to be treated like a doormat, to have my spirit crushed under the weight of his temper. Lying there, I knew I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't change Michael, but I could change my situation. I had to make a choice, for my dignity, for my self-respect. I had to leave, to find the strength to start anew, away from the shadow of Michael's tyranny. The morning after the spaghetti incident, I woke up with a resolve stronger than I'd ever felt. I knew I had to leave Michael and this toxic environment. But leaving wasn't just about walking out the door, it was about standing up for myself, about reclaiming my life. After Michael left for work, I made a call to a lawyer. I explained my situation, my voice steady but my hands trembling. The lawyer was understanding and promised to help me with the divorce proceedings. As I packed my bags, I felt a mix of fear and liberation. I was stepping into the unknown, but I knew anything was better than staying here. I left a note for Michael on the kitchen table, simple and to the point. Michael, I can't live like this anymore. I've gone to stay somewhere else. Please don't try to find me. Bella. I took one last look around the house, a place that once held promises of love and happiness, now just a shell of broken dreams. I closed the door behind me, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I moved into a small apartment I had rented with the money from my investments. It was modest, but it was mine. A place where I could start rebuilding my life. The next morning, Michael's call came. I braced myself before answering. Bella, where the hell are you? He barked into the phone. I've left, Michael, I said, my voice calm. I can't be in this marriage anymore. There was a pause, and then he laughed. You think you can just leave? You think you can survive without me? I felt a surge of confidence. I can, and I will. I'm filing for divorce, Michael. His laughter stopped. You'll come crawling back. You need me. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. No, Michael, I don't. Goodbye. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding. I had stood up to him, finally. Over the next few weeks, I met with my lawyer regularly, building my case for the divorce. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt and fear, but each step forward made me feel stronger, more in control of my life. Michael tried calling a few more times, each call more desperate than the last. But I didn't waver. I knew I had made the right decision. As the day of the divorce meeting approached, I prepared myself to face Michael one last time. I was no longer the scared, submissive wife he was used to. I was Bella, strong and independent, ready to close this painful chapter of my life. The day I had been both dreading and longing for had finally come, the divorce meeting. As I entered the lawyer's office, my heart raced but my resolve was steel. Michael sat there, a picture of arrogance, unaware of the storm that was about to hit him. The lawyer began outlining the divorce terms, but Michael interrupted with a sneer. This is a joke. You think you can just walk away and take half of everything? I looked him squarely in the eyes. It's not just about walking away, Michael. It's about what I've endured and what you've done. He rolled his eyes. Oh please, spare me the drama. That's when I pulled out the photos, the concrete evidence of his infidelity, taken by the private investigator I had hired. His smug expression faltered as he looked at them. Where did you get these? He hissed. I hired a private investigator. Thought I should know exactly who I was married to, I replied, my voice steady. Michael's face turned ashen. He tried to speak but faltered as I pushed the recordings across the table, the countless times he had insulted and belittled me. He listened, his face contorting with each word. This isn't what it looks like, he stammered. I cut him off. Save it, Michael. I've heard enough from you. He suddenly shifted gears, his voice tinged with desperation. Bella, please. Think about my reputation. We can settle this quietly. I shook my head. No, Michael. You didn't think about me, our marriage, or your reputation when you did all this. His pleas grew more frantic. I'll lose everything, Bella. My reputation, my business. Please, I'm begging you. I remained unmoved. You should have thought about that before. I'm done protecting you. The lawyer finalized the terms, and it was clear that Michael was going to lose much more than just his marriage. He looked defeated, a shell of the man who once thought he controlled everything. As I signed the papers, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. I was no longer the woman who tolerated his insults and infidelity. Standing up, I faced Michael one last time. This is the result of your actions, Michael. You're losing much more than your property and reputation. You're losing someone who once loved you, who you took for granted. Walking out of that office, I felt a weight lifted off me. The sun seemed to shine brighter, the air felt lighter, and I felt freer than I had in years. I had stood up for myself, and in doing so, I had found my strength. This wasn't just the end of a painful chapter, it was the beginning of a new life, my life, on my terms.